Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, Brandon, welcome in. Once again, I'd love to welcome you to the show, just like the listeners.
It's very inviting.
Yeah,
it makes
it's all encompassing. We try to be a very welcoming broadcast.
Well, it's arms wide open, right?
Do we say broadcast or is it just podcast? Like, is podcast. There? I mean, I know it's a podcast, but like, can you still get away with saying
broadcast? Broad to me means pretty expansive. I would say that our 6 regular listeners.
Well, if you're including Ireland and you include some of those people international, so we could say international podcast is probably
international broadcast if we're going to go that route.
Yes, if you're going to go that route,
for sure.
International broad pod. That's a new. That's a different.
Let's coin
next
that
evolution. One. Yeah,
let's
get ahead of that curve.
Yeah,
so that'll be good. Well, listen. We've got a great one that will be a familiar voice. I would say face to the listeners, but because it is a podcast or a broad pod, if you will, this is somebody that they have heard before. China McCarney, who of course is the vice president of Jaeger Sports and the founder of Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation, and just a really good dude that. We say this all the time about a lot of the guests that we have on the show, but China is one of these people, and he makes reference to this in the show where he was our smiling faces. And the funny thing is, I dare anybody not to just be in a good mood when he's around. Like, he's just one of those people who just has I don't know if it's the West Coast thing, maybe.
He's charismatic. He's got he's got that kind of chill, but you can tell like he's got a little bit of that dog in him. You know what I mean? And just a great guy. And here's he's younger than us, but like there's this part of me when I see him where I'm just proud of him. Like he's so amazing, and he's so vulnerable, and he lets people know kind of what he's gone through and what he continues to go through. And it's to help them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And he's just a dude that when you see him and he's happy and he's smiling, and I'm like, man, I'm just proud of that guy. Like,
it's inspirational. He's one of those people who's kind of has that, like, you're right. I mean, for all the reasons you mentioned, he's just a really cool dude that, I don't know. I think you hit it on the head there as far as you can't help but feel pride for him, especially with that vulnerability. 'Cause it's something we talk about all the time is, one of the very first things that you have to learn in mental performance is assessment and self-assessment. Sure. And he's done a masterful job. He's is involved in therapy and has done all of taken all the steps. Like when we had him on the mental health, talking about the mental health manual, that is a resource you can find through AAADF. That all of those things that he talks about in that mental health manual, and he even says this in that show, are things he's done himself. Like that's how he came up with these things. And I just can't help but think of all of the people he's helping out there and the impact he's having. So when we had a chance to get him back on the show to talk about, speaking of which, another resource, the Mental Warrior program, that is something that him and Jim Vatcher with Jaeger Sports kind of created, co-created, whatever the case may be, and really dives into the how to really be a more well-rounded competitor with they do such a good job with Jaeger bands of arm care and all that other stuff that this is just that next evolution. And as he talks about, something they'd been wanting to do. So we'll let him tell you that story, but you're going to hear a lot of really, really good information in this podcast broad pod tonight. And get your pen and paper ready. Here is China McCarney. Well, China, how's everything been? It's been a little while since we talked to you last. I think the last time you were on, we were breaking down the mental health manual off of the AAADF website. So how's everything been? Do you have a good new year and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it's great to see your beautiful faces again and those smiles and just catch up a little bit. But yeah, the holidays were good. When you have social anxiety and different things, holidays can be stressful. I think they can be stressful for everybody. But that was a little more prevalent, which was unpleasant but fun to learn about at the same time and talk to people and therapy and all that good stuff. But all in all, healthy, family's healthy. It's early 2023 and I get to see your faces in quarter one. Yeah. So what more can you ask for besides a couple more birdies? Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I tell you what, China, one of the things that, and I've said this to you before, but I just have so much great respect for you for a lot of reasons. But one of the things is every time I follow you, of course, on TikTok, I follow you on Instagram, is just how open you are with all of these, your journey, which is a continuous journey. It's like people don't realize, when you're dealing with some of the challenges that you've dealt with, whether it be panic attacks, whether it be, whatever the situation is, these things are pushed aside, but they're always present. It's not like you all of a sudden one day are like, okay, I don't have that anymore. And so, you're always kind of there. It's one of the best things. I don't know if you have seen the movie A Beautiful Mind. And this is not the direction I thought this first 5 minutes of this show is going to go, but hey, that's what our conversations are all about. But in that movie, Professor Nash, at the end of the movie, no spoilers.
You can't spoil a movie that's like 25 years old, John.
It's like 30 years old. I'm sorry.
In front of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry
you haven't had a chance. Yeah.
Yeah. I sound like I'm breaking down Jaws and what happens there. But he's like, they're talking to him and he's like, the guy asks him, hey, do you still see, these images? And and he's like, yeah, they're still there. I'm dealing with that, right? It's still there. Like everything is still there. You're just dealing with it. And man, you've done a great job as far as like sharing that, opening up about it. But more importantly, as an outsider and as somebody I consider a friend now, it is really cool to watch you just continue to progress.
No, I appreciate that. And I take pride in that, but almost selfishly, because it's almost my best medicine now is being as open as possible, because the worst thing that I did for myself was hide it from everybody for those 6 years that we've talked about on other episodes. Yeah, sure. But it's one of those things. I read something yesterday that was basically everybody's always waiting for this like definition of happiness, like enlightenment, right? We're going to get to this like finish line and everything's going to be okay if we make this certain amount of money. And what you kind of find out is that happiness is really just you learning about how to deal with problems better. Sure. And you have better problems, right? If you make money, you still have problems. You just have more freedom to handle them. But the money's not really the avenue. It's the experience that you've had with everything up to that point. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to realize that there's going to be pain, going to be uncertainty. There's, I think, a great new documentary on Netflix called Stutz. It's Jonah Hill's therapist.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah,
love it.
And he said the three things to happiness to him is if you realize there's always going to be pain, there's always going to be uncertainty, and there's always going to be a need for constant hard work, and you just accept that as you wake up every morning, then the uncomfortable feels a little easier. But I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, I'm sure we'll be vulnerable and self-deprecating on this episode as well.
Well, what's interesting though is too starting to see some of the athletes that are sharing as well, right? And I think that's such a huge testament to you and the foundation, to where, you wonder, or I do, like, you just start seeing the impact of that. Okay, this has been out there for a while. China's been putting stuff out there, and there's this trust and this almost credibility. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it's credibility to say, hey, he's out there, he's doing it, and he's set this foundation up because it is something that he deals with on a daily basis, but it's some place that can kind of be a safe harbor for us as well. And I think just watching that grow has been amazing.
Yeah. And that's the post-playing career purpose, which I still struggle with, which I definitely think there'll be questions that kind of lead into that, where I'm struggling right now in life. But, when you're playing, you have a very specific goal, very specific purpose. It's to win your championships, be a good teammate, all that stuff. But since kind of losing that and moving away from the game, getting into this transition, it's like, okay, what's the purpose? And it's been the mental health and the mental training. But the hardest part to get people to grasp onto is a tangible result. Mm-hmm. Because you can give somebody a diet and a workout program and they're going to lose weight and look better, right?
Right.
But if you work on their mental health, or you tell them what you've experienced and what you've done, they're like, well, I can't see a six-pack on your brain. It's inside your skull, right?
Right.
But it's been cool. Enough people over the last decade or so have tried different things. And probably one of the biggest things that they've realized is any secrets that they thought they were doing justice by hiding is way better in the forefront, and they impact way more people by just sharing and being vulnerable than hiding it and turning to a different substance or abuse to kind of cope with it. And so that's, I think, what I feel slowly starting to change, is like that snowball's getting to the top of the hill, where it's not just a gimmick. It's not just, let's talk about mental health. It's like, we're starting to see some results, and can we stack more to get that snowball rolling down the hill in a good way?
Sure. It's momentum, right?
Yeah.
It's momentum. I mean, it's such a great word. It's a Mark. Every time I say momentum, I think of Mark Glacini, but it's such a good word, because that's what it takes. Is it? And as you start to consume it, speaking of, it's as you start to build on that, it's like more things that come before it encapsulates it. Glacini, when he was on our show, he talked about this idea of like a candle is, a fire on a candle, a little bit of wind will blow it out. But when you have like a forest fire, or you have like a brush fire, something that's a little bit bigger, whatever, everything that it comes in contact with just feeds that. And that's momentum. Like it's the difference between a flame and a fire, is that momentum that you get. And like you said about stacking things on. And one of the things I was curious about, because as Brandon pointed out with the athletes, is I know, Tyler Matzik last year did so many good things for AAADF and the Braves organization. It's really cool. I think you even went out there one time to Atlanta and were there doing some things. Or as we got spring training coming up here, is that something you Earl are going to be doing something else with Tyler or some other players? What's on the agenda this year?
Yeah. No, it changed the path of the foundation forever. And then it changed my life in terms of, I had an interview towards the end of last year, and they said, what have you learned through this whole process with anxiety, with AAAD, different things? And I've never been asked that question. And what came out was, I'm far more capable than I ever thought that I was. Right. And last year, the Braves asked me to speak on their mental health panel with the doctor and the team mental trainer and Tyler, to their urban youth coaches. And when they asked me, it was damn near fetal position, pooping my pants and, just terrified. But I did it. And I remember, I think I did a video after that on social media. I looked down at my watch right before it started, and I was at like 136 beats per minute. And I was sitting down in my chair.
Yeah.
And so it was a cool, very, very cool. It was called Strike Out the Stigma. And we raised a bunch of money with Tyler, and then through Tyler, the Braves Foundation kind of picked up on the story in the media department. So they matched the donation. which has opened up a bunch of doors. And then he's doing it again this year, but he's injured this year. He had Tommy John towards the end of last year. So we talked about 2 weeks ago, and he's fired up where, like, that's his mission this year, is to get into the clubhouse and see if he can rally the Braves organization or different pitchers on the staff to do it with him. And he's going to do something regardless, but he's kind of in feeling out mode right now because they report in a couple weeks, pitchers and catchers. And there should be some exciting news coming, but we'll definitely be doing Strike Out the Stigma. Definitely be doing the second annual AAAD golf tournament in Arizona, probably the end of September, tentatively September 30th. So mark that down.
Nice.
I still haven't decided. Last year, I technically won my own tournament, but I didn't think that was nice to do. So we didn't report our score. But I don't know if that's a first annual rule only, and then you're allowed to win your second one and beyond. Because
I think it's acceptable.
Yeah, sure. I think people gotta step their game up. I mean, let's be honest.
I mean, it's not your fault that you're besting the other guys that are out there. I mean,
Well, what I said before the tournament which was another. I'm not huge public speaker, which might be shocking, but I had to give a speech on the Friday night dinner, and then I gave a couple speeches at the tournament. But my last line right before we sent him out on the shotgun, I'm like, I just appreciate you guys being out here for mental health, and I apologize for what my team's about to do to all of your mental health today.
That's awesome.
So that was pretty fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of mental health, China, one of the things that is been on the radar right now, and I know this is something that you guys are doing there through Jaeger Sports, is the Mental Warrior program. And, Brandon and I mean, that was this whole thing got started 2 years ago because we recognized that as more and more athletes were getting into that mental side of things, it was so important to create another forum. Not that there wasn't already some forums out there, but just another forum for folks like yourself, some of the other guests that we've had on the show over the last couple of years, to talk about what are some things tactically that people can start to do from an application standpoint to get better in that mental side of the game. Tell us a little bit about, this program, Mental Warrior program, who all was involved. I know Jim Vatcher is involved in that. You guys all, I guess it's probably like everything at Jaeger, it takes a village, right? Everybody's got a hand in it somewhere, Alan. But just tell us a little bit about that program.
Yeah, no, it was Jim and myself, and then one of my former college teammates is really incredible at video editing. He lives in Illinois, and so he did the video editing. But it's probably the most proud I've been of us at Jaeger Sports because we have wanted to have a mental product forever. Alan recorded a CD in 2005 or something and just didn't quite like it. And selfishly, for me, I was just very disappointed that we didn't have something out sooner because I didn't think it had to be perfect. I just thought we needed to get the content out there and people could do with it what they wanted, and then we'll figure it out. Like Steve Springer, who I love, has quality at bats, quality at bats 2, quality at bats 3. You just keep going. Even AOL didn't get it right the first time, right? AOL friggin'. But what ended up happening, this might be a little longer answer, but I think the audience will find the behind the scenes kind of fascinating, is we used big league cameras. We had Alan's nephew working here at the time and lighting and we just couldn't get it right. And then COVID hit, shut it down. The nephew ended up not coming back because of COVID. And then Jim and I were testing on the phone. We were just trying to get angles of the camera on the iPhone in here. And we started watching those videos back. Typical dunce freaking ex-ball players, right? Where Jim's looking at me, he's like, that's pretty good. I'm like, yeah, it seems pretty good to me too. And so we went down to the Apple store, bought the newest iPhone, and just started going. And then I sent the first couple of videos to my guy, my former teammate, and he sent back the edited ones, and we were like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, really? So you knew right then?
Yeah. When he sent the first edited one, it looked like, with people on this Final Cut Pro and what they can do in these new iPhones, it was just beautiful. And so we just started rolling. And the reason I'm so proud of it is Jim is such a mild-mannered guy. As we can see, he's not on here tonight with me. He's coaching a 13-year-old soccer practice or something right now. But his story is like what can inspire everyone to never give up. He's 5'8". They wrote an obituary on his baseball career when he was graduating college. Like, well, he had a decent college career, but he's too small to play professionally. And then he goes and plays 15 years professionally, wins World Series on 3 different continents, one in Taiwan, Italy, a double-A World Series here, hits a big league home run with the Phillies with Harry Callis on the call.
Wow.
And it's like, if this little freaking dude who works behind that wall can do it,
Yeah.
And so, but what was cool is the aligning of the stars where Jim got to share his story. I got to help with a modern vision because he played in 1990. And then
it's a good thing Jim's not on the show, I guess.
Yeah. And then it was all the teachings inspired by Alan Jaeger that led to Jim's consistency mentally. Yeah. And so that's the behind the scenes story of the birth of the product. And we can get into kind of how it's laid out and why it's very 2023. None of the videos are longer than 3 minutes, but it'll just kind of give you the very basics of mental training and meditation, and then take you through an expert level of what Jim did when he was in the big leagues and what kind of changed his life.
Well, that's what I love about it, right? I mean, it's if you go, guys, to jaegersports.com, one of the things that is great is I love how it's in this complete competitor package. You can get it, right? You can get it just Mental Warrior, but it's also like part of this complete competitor. I had an opportunity to speak to a college baseball team last night. And one of the things I started out with them is I said, for as long as I can remember, everybody talks about baseball as this mental sport, and you'll hear people say it's 90% mental, but yet we spend maybe 5% of our time working on the mental aspect of the game. And that's probably really over exaggerating that number, because I know most of the time that's not something that's spent a lot of time on. It's starting to become more something, but it's definitely not the amount of time we should be spending on it. So what I like about this program, from what I've been able to see, and I definitely want to unpack some more of this, is it's going to give people, like you said, with the 3-minute vignettes, it's going to give people an opportunity to do some of this stuff on their own. So what if your coach isn't doing this in your team? And so what if you're at that travel baseball program and they're not really digging into it as much? I mean, the earlier you can start some of this stuff as a parent with your kids, the better off you're going to be, not just with sports, but the things that you all are talking to them about are going to help them in life. It's just going to help them in general. So talk to us a little bit, if you would, just about what they can expect. And like you said, just some of the components of this program.
Yeah. So one of my favorite visuals, Jim and I, you heard that right, Jim and I created a jar and we made a snow globe with red glitter. We went and got glycerin and distilled water and we made a snow globe. But the point of that is, one of my favorite visuals, and the way he speaks is just so powerful, is he starts to slightly stir this jar and the red glitter starts to fill the jar. And he's like, what if you never address this, right? Well, what if you stop and leave your mind in silence? And he stops moving his hand and the glitter just starts to fall to the bottom slowly. And then all of a sudden it's clear again. And he talks about, like, this is fine for sports, but imagine what this can do for your mental health, for your life in general. And that's what we're trying to achieve in this training, is what he says. That's the outro. Spoiler alert. But basically, it's 10 videos that are less than 3 minutes. There's an introduction. There's a contents of what to expect. There's the power of the breath. That's really the basis of the training. There's the scientific part of the breath, of the amazing things it does for you with stress, anxiety, relaxation, sleep. But then there's the component of the breath is always happening now, in the present moment. And that's, mental training 101 is you're just trying to give yourself a tool so that when crap is hitting the fan, you have a mechanism to get you back to the present moment and what you can control. And then step one, like if you have a little experience, step one might seem like a joke, but it's lay your mat down and breathe for 2 minutes and do that for a week. And it's like, I can do that. I think I can do that. And then all of a sudden 10 days goes by. I'm like, I have not stopped to breathe. And I know this stuff cold. And then the next one's a breathing exercise with counting. Step 3 is a very involved 25-minute guided meditation where Jim kind of takes you through. And then step 4 is process-oriented approach, how you can implement it into the sport as a pitcher, as a hitter, and then there's a little outro and then a conclusion. But it's very systematic. And the reason it's that way is even if you're an expert, because I've sat down and tried to do it like 3 different times, and I tell Jim, like, crap, I missed the day again. You just life happens, and I know to do it. But it shows you how hard it is to get consistent with your implementation. But if you get past that habitual stage where you make it a habit with anything in life, then it becomes natural, and then we're off to the races, and then you can start adding to the intricacies of mental training. Because a very easy way to visualize this, if you're familiar with sports, is when we go out and do clinics. Well, when we used to go out and do clinics, we would start catch play at 40 feet, right? And the people that paid for this clinic, $50 or whatever it was, is like, really? Yeah. I just paid to watch guys do what I can do?
Right.
Then we're at 60 feet. Then we're at 70 feet. Then all of a sudden, no one's talking and we're at 350.
Right.
And then we're coming in. But if you don't do the 40, 50, 60, 70 feet, then you have no shot of going to 350 with good mechanics and everything else. And that's the good way to think about mental training is if you don't start with the very basics, a 25-minute guided meditation is going to be virtually impossible for you.
It's funny because I start every talk just like I did the one last night with breathing. I literally say, talking to a bunch of college athletes, and I say, guys, I'll guarantee you that the majority of you have not stopped within the last month or so and just breathed and just like taken a chance to just, forget everything that's happened, what's going on with your girlfriend, what's going on with school, baseball, whatever the case would be, and just breathe. And it's funny because it's something we do automatically. It's simple, right? But I always kind of go back to that do simple better. I mean, there's a lot of things in life that are simple. We just don't do. So, it's one of those things I think is important to just remind ourselves of, like, just start with, to your point, the basics. And one of the things for those of you listening, if you're not, I just pointed you to the website a minute ago, but if you're not following Jaeger Sports online, start following them online, TikTok, all the different Instagram, all the different social media platforms. But China, you guys had what is the process that you had? I think it might have come out within the last couple of days where you kind of went through those 3 things. You went through the 3 pieces to your what's the process. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what was just, kind of help people. That's one little tool they can do. It's something they can find online. So just maybe talk through those 3 steps.
Yeah. The process for us, because you always hear, the Sixers trust the process. We're going to lose 100 games a year and get first round draft picks and everything. It's not
a lot of breathing involved there.
Yeah. That's not the process we're talking about. The process we're talking about is 3 or 4 things you can control no matter what is going on. So if we're talking baseball, what sport? If we're talking baseball, it's each and every pitch. What can I control as a pitcher? Mine was very simple. Mine was deep breath, focal point, attack. When I was in college at my D1, I had to add another one, which was commit to pitch because we weren't allowed to shake. And don't get me started. Wow. So I threw a couple non-committed curveballs that went over the scoreboard. I'm like, well, I got to add something to my process here. But the process for us, if you think about deep breath, focal point, attack, we can basically apply that to anything. So if we're in the 7th inning in high school or the 9th inning in other levels of baseball, the bases are loaded, there's scouts in the stands. We could talk for 7 hours right now and come up with variables that we cannot control, right? Mm-hmm. But if I can lock back in, take a deep breath, which is why most of our processes that we recommend start with a deep breath, because it brings us back to the present moment. Get a focal point based on the pitch I'm throwing, and then attack with fastball mentality. As a hitter, deep breath, focal point, which focal point for a hitter, it's more reactionary, like we talked about with Jim, is he changes it to get a good balance, see the ball well, and attack with the intention to swing, but it's all reactionary. And so I think when you first get introduced to mental training, the hard part to wrap your head around is like, tangible result or applicable, like how am I going to apply this in a game, right? You're telling me to lay down by my bed for 5 minutes before, and that's going to help me hit a dinger,
Right,
come on.
Right.
But when we break it down to when you start to try to meditate, if you're very new at it, you will realize that your brain is just waiting to attack you. You lay down, you're like, I'm going to meditate. And then it's like, oh, you didn't pay the rent. Oh, you got to take out the trash. Oh, your dog pooped in the backyard. Oh, your girlfriend hasn't texted you back. Oh, you got to test. And then you're like, whoa. And then you got to get back to the breath. And the more you do it, the easier it is to, those thoughts are there, but I'm focusing on my breath. I have to pay the rent. That's okay. I'm back to my breath. And so the better you get at that next to your bed at night or wherever you do it, the better and easier it's going to be when you're in the game and you have that other thought. It might not be rent this time, but it's the bases are loaded. That's okay. The bases are loaded. Back to my breath. My girlfriend's not in the stands, and neither is Jimmy from homeroom. Oh, that's okay. Back to the breath, right? And so you get better. That's where the practice bleeds over into everyday life or into performances in athletics, is you have a relationship with your breath. You have a relationship in controlling your thoughts so that it doesn't matter what's on the line. I can get back to that process, which is XYZ for you. And that's the fun part of mental training, just like physical training, is it's going to be a journey, and you have to kind of do trial and error to figure out what works for you, because Jim's pitching process would be different than mine, and his hitting process would be different than mine, and his golf process would be way different than
mine. China, and I want the listeners to really zero in on something you just said, because this is not saying that this is a system that's going to help you prevent having those thoughts. The thoughts are going to come. This is all about coming back to being present moment focused. Like that's what I think a lot of people, when you first talk to them about mental performance, or the parent who's like finds out that, I do some stuff with mental performance coaching. They're like, oh, I want you to help my son. And then you start to talk to them and you realize, like, if you think that I can shut that thing off, I can't shut the mind off. Like, that's not what we're saying here. We're saying you're going to have all of these things happen, but it's just, this is going to help you get back to neutral, or get back into that place where you don't have, that you're acknowledging those thoughts and making sure, like you said, you're coming back to the breath.
It's interesting too, because I was going to say, after talking to Alan and to China last year, because how Alan is, right? I mean, he was like, you need to promise me you guys are going to try to adopt this. And I was like, Alan, we're on it. So busted out first practice. I had 2 kids that fell asleep. And this is, we're going to spend 3 minutes here. And to your point, China, we were like, okay, guys, look, like, I just want you to try to turn your brain off. Like, have y'all ever done this before or whatever? And they're like, no, and they're kind of laughing and whatever. And I mean, like, within a minute and a half, I had 2 kids that were just like out. And to me, I thought it was great that, one, they were in a comfortable enough place to be able to do that, right? But then as a parent, I started thinking, oh my gosh, like, these poor kids are so exhausted, and we haven't even started practice yet. Like, this is just to get them focused for what we're going to do. And the stimulation that they get from school, from their phones, all the stuff you listed, China, and damn Jimmy getting in the way of everything in the relationship. But it's amazing to me how some of these athletes and just people in general are functioning at all right now, with everything that pulls and is attacking them on a daily basis. Right. So,
and I think you don't have a chance, like, if they're falling asleep that quickly. And it brought up one of my favorite stories and experiences with Jaeger Sports. It was at an ABCA over a decade ago. And Alan took the pitcher's hot stove breakout room through a meditation, and Ken Ravizza was in there, rest his soul. And it got done. Alan's like, I just want some people to share how they're feeling. And there was like a pregnant pause. And then Ken Reviz is like, I got to be honest with you, Alan, I feel like shit. You know? And I was like, this is early. And I was like, uh-oh, like I know who that is.
Yeah, I know that guy. Yeah.
And
he's red lighting right now.
Yeah. And they started going back and forth. And it was like, Alan's like, if you feel you're tired from the ABCA, right? You're depleted energy. So you giving your brain a chance to go to sleep. But that's where the relationship is so important, because if the first couple times you fall asleep might be a good indication that you may need to get some better rest. Sure. And then, for me, I've always, and this is where Alan and I are a little different, which is why I think this is so cool, because I think different people will have different things, is I want to get into the most neutral mental space so that I can allocate all of my energy into ripping my opponent's head off. Mm-hmm. I'm going to kill you. Mm-hmm. I am the most competitive human. I will beat my grandma in chess. I don't care. And that's the athletic element for me, is like in everyday life, you can argue the non-duality in different schools of thought and different thing. But for athletics in particular, I want my athletes to get a relationship with their thought process so they can allocate as much energy to destroying their task, what they can control, and hopefully, sending the kids on the other team with their tail tucked between their leg. But I think those 2 points are so crucial for the audience to digest. Is if you think of meditation as this fruity monkey thing, not literal the animal monkey like monks, right, and then monkey, sitting on clouds and being completely void of thought, that's not modern Western world meditation. It's about getting a relationship with your breath so that you get a relationship in the present moment so that you can allocate your thoughts the way you want, or have a relationship with your thoughts the way you want. And that's what was so crucial in my development with my panic attacks and my anxiety, is I was competing to win. Yeah. When am I going to beat anxiety? When is it going to be gone?
Yeah.
And it was like, I had one therapist, I wanted to kill her when she said it. She's like, you have to come to the realization that this might be here forever. Mm-hmm. I was like, fuck you, I'm getting a new therapist.
Yeah.
Sorry, It was like,
Yelp review, 1 star.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like, what's my relationship and what am I giving power to? And that's help with alcohol and different things of, I can, if you're in the right spot and you're being consistent with it, we always talk about slowing the game down. Mm-hmm. Well, if you slow your life down, you can allocate the energy towards what you want to. And man, is it fun when you get a little rhythm going with that? And then is it not fun when you're like, where'd all that rhythm go?
Right.
Yeah. And both things that we're talking about there, the breathing and the, process, I call these behavior recipes, right? It's whatever that 2 or 3 things that I can do intentionally right now, that's going to give me the best chance for success. If I do these consistently, that's going to give me the best chance for success. And it's funny, as you were talking about the ones as a hitter, mine were always have your foot down on time, see the ball in the barrel, and then stay on the ball long, hitting it hard, right? But it's the same thing. It's like both of those things as an athlete, the breathing puts me in the present moment and the controllable actions puts me in the present moment, because I cannot now start thinking what if thoughts if I'm in the moment with the breathing and with this task list that's in front of me. So I do think it's really, really good. And I think that it's one of those things that what I'm so excited for the listeners to be able to participate in this, Mental Warrior project is the idea that this is just the beginning. Like, I mean, this is going to be stuff. I know you guys well enough to know that it's going to be 2.0 and other evolutions of this program. So digesting all of this stuff now is going to set them up for, okay, this is the foundation. Now what's the next level? Mm-hmm. And so the earlier you can get your kids, for those of you driving or whatever the case would be, probably to practice or something right now, make sure that you're also giving an opportunity, because if you get this started now, man, it's just going to be a really, really powerful foundation for the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's less than the cost of batting gloves, just FYI.
Exactly.
It's $29.95 for 10-part mental training video.
That's awesome. And what are all the different formats, China? Is that just, is it a website login type of a situation? Is it stuff they can listen to on almost a podcast format where they could do Bluetooth on their way to practice, whatever the case may be?
Yeah. That's the beautiful part is when you first buy it, you will get instructions, a link on how to log into the program. And then there's a landing page to where if you are online, you can watch every video, kind of hop around and everything. But any of the videos can be downloaded. And then what's really cool is once you get to the guided meditation, we have a 25-minute guided meditation with music, without music, an 18-minute just music to where if you just want to meditate, not listen to Jim's beautiful voice, we have that. Then in the process-oriented, we have a process-oriented meditation where it's specifically like 10 minutes that you would listen to before a game. The 25 minutes more general, like if we had our pro guys in the off season in a yoga studio or something and we had more time, but there's an 8 to 10 minute where Jim kind of gets you relaxed and then reminds you about the process so that you can come out of that meditation. And all of those audios can be downloaded. Like I have them on my files on my phone. I was at the driving range today listening to our music because I don't want to hear Jim's voice for sure before golf, but the 17 minutes of music is beautiful. And, you can download or stream however easiest for you to kind of digest the info. But we like the ability for the player, if they're on a bus ride to a game, they can play it right from their phone.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking actually was bus rides because again, going back to your coach may not have bought into this yet. Right. But you as a player have, and that's that moment I think that you have to be able to spend some time and do that is on the bus trip. Don't do it if you're the only one driving the car, going into complete meditation as you're running through the convenience store or something. But yeah, no, I think it's really good. I'm going to flip the page here because I got to be honest with you. When I knew you were going to be on the show, there was something I was so excited to talk to you about. That
he does not want to talk about Tony Little again, John.
Dang it. I'll guarantee you, because I get those text messages from China that he would not mind if we went down that road. He's probably got a couple picks that are.
I'm kind of pissed that it took 46 minutes to get to Tony Little.
Well, we had some other pressing stuff.
Yeah,
but you had something on social media recently that kind of went right in line with a lot of thoughts I've had, and it's interesting. I almost think it's something we have to talk about because, and I'll explain here in a minute why it's almost become a perfect storm of a lot of people I really respect and a lot of their thoughts on this. But you posted I want to say it was on your AAADF account for Instagram, but you posted this idea about expectations versus reality, and I don't know if you remember kind of that whole thing, but I thought it was really, really important, and I want to start unplugging this or unpacking this a little bit because one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about right now is how often we anticipate and don't participate, right? I used to have a coach who used to always say that is, don't anticipate, participate. He used to always say, and I never really knew what that meant probably when I was younger and as a player, but now as I've gotten older and a little bit more, have a little bit different context on some of this stuff. It's so true as you were sharing on this Instagram post about how often, we use our past experiences with certain things in life to predict, or at least in our mind say, oh, this is going to suck today. Like this trip to whatever I'm going to be doing is not going to be good because the last time I was here, it wasn't very good. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I have some thoughts I want to share as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking when that was probably around the holidays and traveling a little bit, which always gives me anxiety and expecting the worst. And when I was at my worst for anxiety, most of my panic attacks were anticipatory panic attacks. It's like I've been anxious there before, so I'm going to be anxious there again instead of let's go and see how we feel and deal with what happens. And so, yeah, I think expectations either way can be harmful, right? Where if you're expecting something to be completely awesome and there's going to be no adversity, well, then you might not be prepared for adversity. I had this saying, I don't even remember when that was. It might have been 2016 or 17 when I was kind of coming out of the worst of the panic attacks. But it was expect the best, but prepare for the worst, right? Mm-hmm. Because then you're prepared for everything, but at least go into it with an open mind and expecting. And so, yeah, I think I caught myself more anxious than I had been in a while, and nothing was really happening. So I was realizing, like, I'm creating this again with my brain instead of just, living life and enjoying the experience I was having with my family or going to a new golf course in Arizona or different things where most people would just be like, this is awesome. And I was like, well, what if I have a panic attack there? And it's like, well, dumbass, when's the last time you had a panic attack? Like, just go into it and have fun. So I think expectations can work both ways, where if you expect too much of like a rosy thing without preparing, then you can get caught kind of with your pants down or unprepared. But at the same time, if you prepare for the worst and you're pessimistic, you're going to miss out on enjoying so many things in life. And that's what I'm trying so hard to get to right now. I'm struggling hardcore with purpose and passion and different things right now in my own life, but trying to remind myself to slow down and, stupid saying, slow down and smell the roses. But like, we're out on the course today at 9 a.m. on a work day, and I'm pissed that I didn't hit the birdie putt. It's like, really, bro? It's 65 degrees. Pull your head out. Yeah.
Right.
But China, this is, and I guess what has got me on this trip right now is that we label so much. We label emotions. We label, it's like, I remember, I came up kind of through that whole Brian Cain school of mental performance, and Cainer always talks about this idea that, the same physiological things that are going on in your body when you're excited are the same things that are going on in your body when you're scared. It's the heart's pumping, you're breathing a little bit heavier, the palms are getting sweaty, all that stuff. It's the same thing, but we are the ones who say, I'm scared or I'm nervous or I'm anxious and not excited. Why don't we just reframe that to be excited? Have you, either one of you, and because I haven't had a chance to ask Brandon this question as well, but have either one of you all heard the story of the Chinese farmer? So for the listeners, China's shaking his head. And I'm going to tell this story briefly for the listeners, but the basis of the story is that there's a Chinese farmer and his son who live in a village, and one day the horse runs away. The farmer's horse runs away, and everybody, all his neighbors, come up and they're like, "Oh my God, it's the worst thing ever! I can't believe your horse ran away right before harvest time. It's going to be so much extra work for you and your son. That's the worst thing that could have happened." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then the next day, the horse comes back and it has like 8 horses with it, the wild horses that it's brought back to the farmer. And it gets done, and the neighbors come around. They're like, "What a turn of luck for you. I can't believe this. All these horses, you're going to be able to double the amount of effort that your one horse was doing. It's going to be the best harvest ever." And he says, "Maybe." And then the next day, his son is, out there trying to train one of these wild horses, and he falls and breaks his leg. And same thing, the neighbors come back around and they're like, "This is the worst thing that ever happened." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then the final kind of piece to this is that the son is there with a broken leg, and it's right around the time that the representatives from the Chinese army come around, and they're looking for people to become soldiers for the Chinese army and go off to war. But the son gets bypassed because he has a broken leg. And they all come around, the neighbors, and they say, "Wow, what great fortune for you because of the fact that your son has a broken leg. He doesn't have to go off to war now. This was such a great turn of events." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And I love this story because the moral of the story, of course, is the fact that, all these things happen in life are just part of this complexity that's out there. Like, we're the ones who assign or try to assign fortune or misfortune to it. But the reality of it is it's just stuff that's happening. It's stuff that's out there. And so I was thinking about this because, as I was saying, we're the ones who kind of come up with the label of good and bad. And why I said it was the perfect storm is I had seen this post of yours back in the holidays. And then I read that story of the Chinese farmer. And then just the other day, and Brandon probably saw this because I know he's a follower of the Daily Stoic as well, but Ryan Holiday was talking about China. You are a subscriber as well.
I just wrote Ryan Holiday 10 days ago saying he helped save my life, and he wrote back.
No kidding.
Is that right? That's fantastic. Well, we're definitely going to have to unpack that. I'm just going to spend a second here talking about this, just making that final connection for the listeners. But Holiday had a post recently in the Daily Stoic. It was that it was titled "It's Just Happening," and he talks about the fact that some people believe that life is happening to them. And it's one of these things that every misfortune, all of the things like, the economy, the adversity, frustrations, that it's happening to us. But he says, even in there, just like with the Chinese farmer, these are things that are just happening. We're the ones that are, this fortune is not out to get you, right? It's not like life is out to get you. It's that you are there and life happens to be happening around you, but it's not happening to you. So, all of that is I think so interesting because I've been on this big kick lately about everybody that you talk to anymore is like, the world's coming to an end. We've got all this division, all of these other things that are going on. And it's like, sometimes you just got to get back to that breath and just be like, okay, this is happening. So what now? What, right? Like that's happened. Now, what am I going to do about it? But it's just a matter of, response. It's like, and that's, I think, the big thing about, that whole expectation versus reality. But don't you think that social media has kind of created some of that as well, of that, this is this great thing we have in our mind, Brandon?
Well, first of all, I mean, social media, let's talk about the Chinese farmer and his neighbors. All right. I mean, clearly he's in an HOA. Because there ain't nothing nosier than an HOA neighbor. So let's just get that out there. But I think that to your point and to the point of the story where we're the ones assigning value to whatever it is, number one. Number two, the social media now, everybody's a neighbor, right? Everybody gets to chime in with a heart, a thumb up, a bird, a poop emoji. Whatever the hell it is.
What kind of social media platforms are you using with the bird?
Is not everybody on the, Facebird? I guess not. I guess that's just me. But the everybody now gets to have an opinion on the value of what just happened in your life that you're choosing to post about. And I think so to that end, it is true from a stoicism perspective that life's just happening, man. You're just a little speck of dust that happens to be interacting with everything else. Don't take everything personally, right?
Right.
But by the same token, we have these platforms that are allowing people to put value on you. And, that's a big challenge. It's a big challenge.
Yeah, there's so many platforms where you can make anything personal now.
100%.
And you can, I have, and I might have shared this on one of the other episodes, but the folder on my phone where my social media lives is called Social Crappia. Right? And it's just a subtle reminder to just like I want to do so much more personally, but I have such a hard time spending time on there because I'm susceptible to getting anxious over something that has nothing to do with me, or seeing a negative comment and feeling bad for the person that it's about or whatnot. Because I'm like, one of my faults is like being empathetic.
You're an empath, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I'll do the social media stuff, and then like the Jaeger Sports stuff, our TikToks, we just got on in July and we've done pretty well. And it's just so funny because we posted one last Friday and it exploded. Just a simple J-band exercise of me doing it right and doing it wrong. And some kid on there was just like, yeah, that may help, but the guy doing it looks like an idiot or something. And then like
I think when you say exploded, that was Alan and Jim watching that over and over, reading that comment.
Yeah. And then like 25 kids liked it, and one kid wrote he agreed. And I'm like, I'm watching myself like, what am I doing wrong here? But
right.
It's the Daily Stoic thing's so awesome because he gave me great perspective just through their postings and stuff during COVID of like, this isn't special, right? You're not special going through COVID, where it was like, no one's ever dealt with this before. And it's like, it is a very difficult time. Too many people lost their lives. There is sadness and emotion, but it's not something other humans haven't dealt with throughout history with plagues and not had the, option to quarantine or medicate and different things. And so, it's perspective. And the one thing I was thinking about when you were talking too is I remember a therapist telling me one thing that would give me anxiety about going to social events with friends and different things is if I have a panic attack, how is it going to ruin their time? My friends. And she was like, how selfish are you to determine how your anxiety is going to make others feel?
Yeah.
And I was like, selfish? Another therapist. Here we go. No, I'm just kidding. But it was like, whoa, like, because I have the tendency to over apologize where they weren't even thinking about it, but because I labeled it for them and apologized for it, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, you know what, I am angry at that. It's like they weren't even thinking about it, and you're like, fudge, man. Like, you gotta almost wait until someone says you've offended them to then apologize and really hash it out, as opposed to like, did they notice that I said something wrong? Like today, tiny example, just real world, because it just cracked me up that I was like, really? So on the second hole today, my buddy Jumbo is putting first in a scramble. And there's a little stick, not really in his line at all. But I'm like, do you want me to move that? And he laughed. And I took it as he thought I was making fun of him, that I would say, does that need to be moved? Because it wasn't in the line. Okay, he's going to miss that bad.
Right.
And so on the next hole, I'm like, hey, man, like, sorry if you thought I was making fun of you. I was actually saying, because I know you're a visual putter, and I didn't know if you were going to aim at that, but I wanted to move it. And he looked at me cross-eyed like, what are you talking about? And that's an example of like,
that still was with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's
but it's funny, China. Brandon and I were just talking before the show tonight. We were talking about, like, I don't know what even we were discussing specifically, but we were describing, one of us, I think, said something about like, oh, well, people are, going to be let down, or they're going to be like surprised, or they're going to be thinking like, bad about us because this thing didn't happen that we thought should happen. And I said, but that's us projecting expectations, right? Like that's us projecting that thought that somebody else has about us. And it's one of those things that, I don't know if you've read Brett McCabe's book, Break Free from Suckville, but it's a great book because he talks about Suckville as this place that you go when you feel like you haven't lived up to your potential. But he's like, but the problem is, number one, you're usually the person who is place this potential on yourself or these expectations. Nobody else is doing that. You're the one who thinks that way. But now you put yourself in this mental space because you feel like you're not living up to your potential. And he said, and the reality of it is you probably never will live up to your potential because your potential is always going to change as you change.
Sure.
So it's like this, you're chasing this carrot. It's like the old man with the dollar bill at the end of the fishing pole. Oh, you almost got it. Didn't you? Almost got it. That's potential, right? Is that you're not always going to get there because as you get better as a player, your potential now grows. So you're always going to be keeping that goal in front of you.
Yeah. And seems like every time we get together and talk, it's like we get into whatever epiphanies have been going on lately, which is how the universe works. But last week, so 8 days ago in therapy, I'm doing EMDR right now, which is you get into your subconscious by watching something on the screen and trying to dig into the divorce and my mom going to jail twice before I was 12 and this lack of worth. When rationally I can look at my life and be like, you're doing all right, man. You're doing good. but the irrational imposter syndrome and different things. And so this sentence came out of my mouth and I wrote it down. I was like, there's work to be done still, right? It was the only time I feel worthy is when I feel like I'm living life better than anyone ever has. Right?
Wow.
And my therapist was like, wow, because if I'm not waking up at 5:42, which I wake up for Jackie Robinson at 5:42, going to meditate, reading, journaling, eating well, working out, and like if I drink too much or I, say something dumb to my buddies when we're gaming, it's like 1,000 positive days are wiped out with one bad one. And it's that labeling thing and really feeling kind of that thing. But yeah, it's that same thing that you were just talking about. But when that sentence came out of the mouth, that's why I love EMDR, because it's like that was back somewhere, this worth complex. And so it's like, that's irrational. So you start to work on what you can control, like tying everything together that we've been talking about is those are thoughts. That's a thought in my head. I can control what I do right now. I can take my deep breath, give thought to this answer, and we can go on trying to live every moment. And just at least for me, when I noticed I'm feeling the most fulfilled and the most happy is when I'm slowing life down, truly saying like, I want to shoot the best score possible. I'm preparing for the best. But if we shoot the worst score possible in golf today, then I'm going to fire Jim. No, I'm just kidding. Then I'm going to enjoy being with my two best friends on a course February 2nd when it's, 65 degrees out and there's no wind and it's beautiful outside. And the more you can remind yourself, hopefully the more it becomes the habit as opposed to the exception where you're like, oh, I actually was happy today, one day out of 100,
Yeah. Well, you stop keeping score of a game that nobody else is playing. Right.
Oh my God. Running out of paper here.
But that's the reality, right? Is when you just described that, I was thinking China's keeping score of a game nobody else is playing. Like this quest to win is and that competitor in you is you're doing all these things and wearing yourself out. And at some point you realize, oh shit, I'm the only person who's even
paying attention. The
scoreboard. Yeah. I'm the only one who's even doing any of this stuff. Like, I'm the only person who is concerned with me winning or losing because nobody else is even involved in this game. It's just the game I'm playing against everybody else that nobody else is keeping score of.
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. Let me know your Venmo and I'll Venmo you the therapy session.
Hey, listen, you'll get one more session and then you'll be on to the next one. Trust me. It's a 1.5-star review just waiting to happen.
Tony Little.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let's go.
Yeah. No, but man, I tell you, as I said to you in a text message this morning, it's like, we always run out of time way before I want the conversation to end because our conversations are just so natural. And even though it's been a little while since we've had a chance to catch up with you, I always feel like we're talking every day because, Brandon and I both are following the stuff that you're doing. And just so proud of you. I mean, that's the biggest thing is like just 100% proud of you. And and to your point, it's not just because of all of the things you're able to do personally, but it's the things that you're able to do externally. It's all of the things that you're helping others to do. You mentioned Ryan Holiday saving your life. I think of how many people through AAADF that you've had impact on because of the fact that they have picked up the website or they've got the mental health manual or they have been the recipient of this evolution that you started way back when you just decided, you know what, instead of just talking about it, I want to be about it. I want to do something that's going to be the change that somebody else needs, and I think that's a really cool thing. And so that's why I look at it and I'm like, man, this guy is just, it's always the smiles that we have are because we know you're on with us tonight. And it's going to be a really enjoyable time because you kind of exude some of that stuff.
100%.
Well, yeah, that means a lot. And You were going to get me, you little.
Damn, I almost thought, man, the first show.
Hey, I'll say this. Right? I'll say this. He also cried, though, China, when Tony showed up at that first infomercial while he was eating stovetop stuffing. So there's a lot there to, like John likes to say, unpack. But I will say this. It was pretty wild to be here in Atlanta and watching some of your posts with everything you were doing with the Braves. And I'm telling people, like, I know that dude. Like, I know that guy. You know that guy? I do. Yeah. So get you some of that. So it was pretty wild to see all that. It was awesome.
And then he's yelling from the stands, "Hey, China!" And China's like, "Security."
Hey, man, I don't know who that dude is. Hey, who's that fat old guy up there that keeps? I mean, he's heckling me. I'm not even playing.
No, but by the way, speaking of that, China, the next time you're in Atlanta for anything, I mean, Brandon lives there. My son lives there. Like, hey, that's a little, live in person.
I'll probably be there this year. That last year I wasn't there in person. We had me on Zoom from LA, so I wasn't there, or I would have definitely reached out. But the last thing I'll say, unless you have another question, but like one of the biggest things that stuck with me from the first time us three talked, and we kind of got vulnerable because we were feeling each other out. Whenever that was, it was probably a while ago now, but
it was
the theme that I took away from that first one was showing grace and compassion for yourself, right? And something I've always struggled with. And then, like, it feels like every time when we're done talking, we all kind of get to kind of reflect on journeys and different things. And the reason I reached out to Ryan Holiday, because I'm not really that guy. But I finished his Discipline is Destiny book. And there was a chapter in there where basically the theme of the chapter was sometimes discipline and courage is just not committing suicide,
Wow.
And when I read it, I just got emotional. I was just like, God, man, no one's ever said that, because it's so like the word suicide, and you just get so uncomfortable, and you don't really want to seek like affirmation for not dying. Like, you're like, I'm still here. And everybody's like, well, so am I. Like, but I wrote him and I just said, I hope like, I'm past that point, but I was there for about 3 years after I got done playing in 2012 to 2015. It was basically, can I survive today? And to read somebody that I respect so much. I mean, I have way too many copies of his books. I'll buy double copies with the thing. I have the, this is kind of my fidget spinner, which is the 4 Stoic Values coin, and I just wanted him to know how cool it was, because everything else, is so, he shares big stories of these powerful people from history. And it was like, somebody out there is going to read that and you're going to save their life today. And I just wanted you to know you had a small part in saving my life and making my life better. And he wrote back something real short, but he's like, wow, that's why I do it. Like, just,
that's awesome.
Thank you for sharing that journey. And I'm proud to be a tiny part, but you're the one doing the work. Typical, like, stoic humbleness.
Yeah.
But and so my final message to the listeners, regardless of what you're going through, is just try to cultivate a little more compassion for yourself, a little more stillness or slowing down, because we always talk to athletes about slowing the game down, but when you slow life down and you really truly do try to count what you're grateful for, like when you guys were talking right there at the end, I was just like, zone in right here. Do not think about anything else. Don't think about what you're doing after this. Like, listen to this. How cool is this? We're in different parts of the country, but because of technology and because we feel the same way about certain things, we can have a moment like that. And you almost got me to tear up, but I didn't. Okay. Zoom is.
Well, we'll go back to the tape on that.
Yeah.
There, big boy.
You're going to do the progressive
red flag.
Listen, if you happen to see a 45-second snippet with Sarah McLachlan playing in the background, you got it. Just don't be shocked.
If you superimpose Blue Tears on me with that song and post it on social media, you guys can play in the AAAD tournament for free.
What? Nice, hey, what if we did the Michael Jordan
that's right.
tier thing? Yeah. So,
that'd be pretty good. But that song is everything. It makes anything sad.
It makes it all.
Yeah. Some little 13-year-old punk is going to be like, what an idiot. I can't believe it. You know, can't believe the same guy that's out trolling you.
Yeah.
Oh, it takes, because I have pretty much free reign on TikTok because Alan's pretty strict other places, and we have a very good thing, but it takes everything in my body. Like, I want to say, you know what looks stupider? Being in a Tommy John cast after Tommy John.
Like, just go all in on this kid. Who all he is just sitting there going through TikTok, just commenting the same dumb comments to everybody.
It's this right here. It might as well be just flipping coins. Just
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, man, we can't thank you enough for taking out the time, because I tell you, I mean, we always talk about all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, I mean, you still have all your responsibilities with Jaeger Sports. So it's not like, you know, you just have limitless time to be, you know, talking to us, but we always appreciate
he's got enough,
so much out of it.
Listen, he's got enough time to be playing golf this morning. He can carve out an hour and 15 for us.
I think he's found a way to make sure that is like part of the job.
Oh, he's raising the hand.
I would just like to say that those rounds of golf are a case study for our next Mental Warrior Program 2.0.
Of course,
we're implementing
it.
Well played. And,
there's
not
never
only well played, but I think now those are also tax deductible. So this is not, let me put this disclaimer out there. This is not tax advice.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just saying.
That's right.
We get to the course, I put a ball on the putting green, and I say, hey, Jim, J-Bands, we good? And then we go play.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right, brother.
All right, buddy.
We're pulling for you as always. Let us know the you know, how things are going with. I mean, we're going to be dialed in. Hopefully, everybody, and we'll put this stuff on the website. But everybody gets a chance to get out there and check out Mental Warrior. And those of you who have not already got on the, you know, Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation website, do yourself a favor and do that. Recommend it to other people. Check out the mental health manual. There's so many great resources on there. And then find ways to support. You know, I know last year you did the thing in November with 100 miles. So, you know, sign up for any newsletters or anything like that, because there's different ways that you can support this foundation and do it on your own, like fundraising, you know, start figuring out ways. And trust me, if you know, rode into China and said, hey, I have a way of doing some fundraiser, I don't think he's going to be like, no, we're good.
But I'm here to tell you, China, in all seriousness, you're going to get some of those same emails that you sent out you're doing great work, man. And you're impacting so many people that you may not even know yet, but just keep on it. We're praying for you. You know, you're doing wonderful stuff, and we're super proud of you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate both of you. And I have anytime to talk to you two, because I learn something every time. I got an entire page of notes, and we're good to go. You almost made me cry.
Keep rocking that hat in your videos.
Yeah, no kidding. Right. Hey, because the one thing those kids aren't going to punk is a hat. Because if I see a comment, that ain't
Brandon are going on.
You don't have to worry about it. You can tell Alan, hey, it was Brandon. I had nothing to do with it.
I'm going to do a 5-second video tonight. What do you think of my hat?
There you go.
Right. Yes. There you go. And let them all come. Take your best shot, you 13-year-old.
Little punks.
I love that.
All right, man.
All right, brother.
Have a great one. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you.
All right, see you.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.